Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good afternoon to all of you. We at the Modern College of Business and Sciences are glad to open this series of the Modern College of Business and Science Chronicle series for the academic year 2021-2022. And we thank all the participants who are joining us from within the MCBS community and outside MCBS community, from Oman, outside Oman. Thank you for attending this presentation as part of the Modern Chronicle series of MCBS. We are glad and proud with receiving our guest speaker for this afternoon, Mr. Jonathan Ray, the Director of Communications of Creative and Cultural Skills from the UK, who is going to dwell on the topic New Horizons of Linking Academia with Industry. We all know the value of linking academic institutions, especially higher education institutions, to the world of industry and the complementing nature of what happens in the higher education institution and industry, and this interaction benefits both the industry and the higher education institutions. This is part of our commitment as MCBS to forge and maintain solid relationship with the industry, and we gain a lot of experience and opportunity for our students from this connection and relationship. To dwell more on this topic, we are glad to invite Mr. Jonathan Ray to this first of our series, Modern Chronicle series. And without further delay, I give the microphone to Mr. Rayhan to introduce our speaker. And I wish you all a very successful and fruitful and I'm sure enjoyable presentation. Thank you.
Dr. Musa, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and greetings for the day. I am Hitachi Site, Founding Director of Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Incubation and Program Head of Management at Modern College of Business and Science. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome such an illustrious speaker, Jonathan Ray, and all participants locally and globally to this interesting webinar titled New Horizons of Linking Academia with Industry. Jonathan Ray has an inspiring profile which serves as a guide to younger professionals in the audience, including me. I would take some minutes to highlight key aspects of his long multiple career paths. As already mentioned by our Dean, he is the Director of Communications at the UK National Skills Council for Creative Industries and worked previously at international research institutes across the world, which includes the UK, the Gulf and Asian regions. Born in the UK, he graduated from Durham University and then joined BBC's postgraduate training program in London. This highly competitive scheme provides a small number of graduate students with a full curriculum in journalism and communication. As part of his professional development, Jonathan took up work placements at BBC TV News and BBC World Service Radio, and he later became a news gathering editor and a political correspondent for the BBC. He also presented news programs for independent television in the UK. Jonathan describes this, that is TV journalism, as his first career. Moving on to his second career path, although which closely links with his first, started 15 years ago when he made the professional transition to communications and external relations, joining Nottingham University as Director of Public Affairs. Jonathan's time at Nottingham saw the university declared both UK University of the Year and Entrepreneur University of the Year. To the audience members here, these two awards, as I have understood as a student in the UK system, are one of the prestigious awards, and I'm very happy to see both these awards and Jonathan's force behind us. During this period, Nottingham also opened pioneering campuses in both China and Malaysia, with Jonathan leading public relations and media across this international network of campuses. His international experience was then further strengthened by a move to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which happens to his move to the Gulf region, where he led communications and external relations in the office of the founding president of King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, very commonly and famously known as KAUST. Jonathan then remained in the Gulf, working in the UK government Department of Trade and Industry. He was responsible for promoting British business and education in the GCC, forging commercial opportunities between education and industry. He worked from UK embassies in Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. And he tells me, and this remains, a fact, that he was most happy when his work took him to Muscat. So I think we all agree with Jonathan's experience and his personal motive. In 2016, Jonathan returned to the UK to join Oxford University as its head of communications and deputy director of public affairs, leading teams responsible for research promotion, digital events, public relations, and an extremely busy press office at the world's top-ranked university. 3 years later, he was traveling once again, accepting the role of Vice President of Communications at another ambitious international startup institution with serious government backing in Japan. Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology has 4 Nobel Prize-winning scientists on its board and has an agenda to transform industry academic innovation and create a blueprint for world-leading research in Japan. Here, Jonathan embedded a new communication strategy, established government and industry relations events and platforms in Tokyo, which led to significant public and business engagement programs. He then launched the institution's foundation in both Tokyo and Washington, D.C. There's a lot more to share, but I don't want to take away the time we have with Mr. Jonathan's session. I'm sure this webinar would generate a lot of thought-provoking points. Please feel free to share your questions and inputs in the chat window on the MS Teams platform. We shall definitely discuss each one of them at the end of Mr. Ray's session. Welcoming you all once again. Over to you, Mr. Jonathan.
Well, thank you very much, Rehan, and I'm hoping that you can all hear me. I'm sure you can. And I'd like to bid you a very good afternoon from Durham in the north of England, where we have the weather here we are very used to, rain. It's not the beautiful cooling rains of Salalah in summertime, but this is cold rain falling from grey skies. Not too far from Scotland, and I noticed that Scotland's cricket team plays the Sultanate of Oman tomorrow in the World T20 matches. There is great rivalry between England and Scotland, so I wish Oman every success. I'm deeply grateful to Modern College of Business and Science, to the Dean and his leadership team, to the academics, to the faculty for the opportunity to engage on today's subject. And it is a particular pleasure to spend time with my excellent colleague, Dr. Saeed Al-Kitani, whose PhD alma mater will feature a little later. As our moderator so kindly acknowledged, I've been very fortunate to work in the Gulf and in Japan, Malaysia, and in Europe. So I will now share with you my presentation, and I would like to begin by moving the presentation, which will address new horizons of linking academia with industry, will address the goals, some global approaches, key drivers, a look at audiences, and some examples of best practice. I would like, first of all, to take you to Switzerland. And the reason for that is because it is home to the World Economic Forum, whose founder and executive chairman, Professor Klaus Schwab, was decades ahead of the world in bringing into very close proximity the worlds of business, academic leadership, senior politicians, and influencers. And in 2016, not so long ago, Schwab described a world undergoing the 4th industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution, you will know, used water and steam to mechanize production. The second applied electricity to create mass production. The third used electronics and information technology to automate our world. And now, today, a fourth industrial revolution, characterized by a real fusion of technology, is blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological, really blurring the lines. The speed of the current breakthroughs in our world has no historical precedent. It is disrupting almost every industry in every country through mobile devices, processing power, emerging technologies and artificial intelligence, the use of data in social sciences, greater autonomous vehicle use and production, nanotechnology, quantum computing. Business leaders and senior executives need to understand this changing environment, and they need relentlessly and continuously to innovate. So the question I think that we are posing is really, where does the responsibility for forging these breakthroughs, making these connections, where does that rest? Where does it rest within the balance of the work in universities and in our industrial structure? Well, the UK government declared not long after Klaus Schwab's speech that the fourth industrial revolution will be defined by advances in how science, technology, and innovation is harnessed, applied, and fused together. And this built on the recommendations of a very eminent scientist. Let me introduce here to Professor Dame Anne Dowling, who is a world authority on combustion and acoustics, whose career began in industry with Rolls-Royce, and she promoted a report which she undertook for the government. And in common with everything I reference for you today, this report is available online. It is readily and freely accessible. And it highlighted the importance of promoting positive perceptions of the benefits of collaborating with business across academia. It examined ways to establish a research-intensive, innovation-led economy characterized by that flow of ideas and collaboration between our colleges and our universities and the industrial sector, just as we heard from our distinguished host at the beginning of our meeting today. So let me share with you, if I may, some of the principal recommendations of Dame Anne's report. She said that for academics in relevant disciplines, spending time in industry should be seen as a mark of esteem, something that enriches their career, if you like, something just as valuable and comparable with working internationally, with that international experience. She also recommended to the UK government that universities and research institutions should expect their newly hired principal investigators in relevant disciplines to gain industrial experience. She said it was essential that universities should ensure that PhD students particularly receive intellectual property awareness, wider business skills training. And she said that the research councils and the major funders of higher education should support students to spend some time in business as part of their training, an active role in facilitating industrial placements for their students. This was in 2015. Of course, mutually constructive engagement between academia and industry requires a sense of optimism, a real visualization of the benefits on both sides. And this is something which Oxford's current Pro-Vice Chancellor, David Gann, and his colleagues analysed in 2018. The most successful universities have considered this with great care, and they have concluded that endeavour to find solutions to complex problems means few organisations have the internal capacity to deliver results on their own. So collaboration between universities and industry is increasingly a question of maintaining your position in the market space, remaining viable, remaining relevant and productive. Also, universities, academics and their funders, of course, want to see results from their research being put into practice. And increasingly, a circle of learning between industry and academia is seen as an increasingly relevant need, because there is a 21st century trend amongst current cohorts of students. I am confident that this is true at Modern College, at its sister institutions in the Sultanate of Oman and throughout the Gulf. Certainly in the United Kingdom today, students are keen to explore entrepreneurial careers, and often with a focus on social enterprise. So here from the Dowling report is a sense of some of the academics' motivations for engaging in collaboration with business. It gives their work meaning and purpose. This was research from more than 160 universities in the UK. Interesting problems come from university. It allows theory and practice to be connected. Students value their industrial experience, as we know, and also it is really essential to see that social value and something growing. There is a strategic agency in the United Kingdom called the Knowledge Partnership. It is now part of the Times Higher Education family of businesses who produce the International University World Rankings. And the Knowledge Partnership have set out very clearly what colleges and universities see as some of the gains from that deeper, more effective industry engagement. We know that it transforms the learning experience of students, and it equips them with the insight they need in a very demanding job market all around the world. It can revitalize institutional research programs in an environment, particularly today, post-COVID-19, where funding is harder to secure because of the other costs on public and government services and provision. We know that workforce development portfolios and continuing professional development income can be greatly enhanced in an environment where it is second nature to collaborate with business. And of course, it demonstrates that commitment to regional development and to economic growth. My former colleague, Professor Louise Richardson of Oxford University, you see her here on the right of the slide, a truly inspirational leader. Louise said when she was installed as Vice-Chancellor at Oxford that universities do serve as guardians of our culture, but they also serve as engines of the economy, as drivers of social mobility, as foundations of democracy, and always as generators of ideas. Now, this will interest you. I thought you would be keen to know where in the world there is particularly strong and well advanced academic and industry collaboration. 8 nations feature. There is some movement year on year. But if colleagues in Oman and joining us today for this meeting would like to broaden their horizons and assess academic and business collaboration in its most concentrated and its most mature form, then the places to look at currently in the world are Switzerland, the United States, Israel, Finland, the Netherlands, the UK, Germany, and Singapore. Now, a world living through a 4th industrial revolution is hyperconnected. It is interdependent. So a global ranking of the nations which have established the most fertile university industry ecosystems is, I think, something which will gain in strength, relevance, and application within the world in which we all work as colleagues. So that's a little bit of the international picture. Going back to the task force that I mentioned that Professor Richardson was a member of, it was called Research to Recovery, and its purpose was to ensure that university and business interaction was optimized given the limiting horizon we have of COVID-19. So Even in a comparatively mature context like the United Kingdom, the Research to Recovery Task Force only within a year ago made recommendations to our government and to UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, whose mission is to connect discovery to prosperity and public good. To connect discovery to prosperity and public good. And the task force urged the government to direct academic and commercial research at a series of missions and grand challenges, such as commercial focus in biotechnology, in quantum, and in achieving net zero carbon emissions. And on this slide, I am showing you two recommendations with a summary of the detail. One, that the government should support universities to develop a strong, diverse pipeline of research and development and innovation for the future, which flows in and between academia and industry. In and between. The UK doesn't need more people with the right skills. What it needs much, much more, like all parts of higher education, is that culture of collaboration and mobility between academia and industry, the thing that Dr. Rayhan and his colleagues are researching at Modern College in common with business schools and innovation experts around the world. Another demand of the task force, highlighted here in blue, is a call to establish a network of innovation collaboration zones across the country. Now, where will you find the ultimate innovation collaboration zones on the planet? The task force were very clear. They had their eyes on Silicon Valley in the US. Levi Pulkkinen of the Guardian newspaper reported recently that if it was real, the Sultanate of Silicon Valley would be among the world's richest countries. Silicon Valley residents outproduce almost every nation on earth. And here you will find that very, very productive interflow between leading colleges and universities and industry. But the task force in the UK were also looking at Germany. Germany and other of the countries in that top 8 of academia industry collaborations. And under the chancellorship of Angela Merkel, Germany has developed single site cooperation between science and industry as part of a high-tech strategy. And these research campuses have 3 main characteristics. They focus on industry on campus, everything under one roof. They focus on new topics with a medium to long-term perspective in the joint interest of science and industry, and they are each supported by a binding public-private partnership which is based on cooperation agreements, on agreements which deal with intellectual property, and clear and secure funding from the partners involved. So the UK task force, looking at recovery and academic industry collaboration and new horizons, recommended the creation of innovation collaboration zones, which would create that critical mass across research. Now, I don't want you to look at the slide on the left. There is too much small text and too much English language jargon. I'd like you to look at the right of the screen, and I will summarize some of the enablers that they say should be deployed in innovation and collaboration zones. Co-location and co-creation, as we have just discussed, increased research and development tax credits, simplified local planning, and allowing existing university infrastructure, such as the high-speed broadband we enjoy, the laboratory access, the equipment we have for our academic work, to be made available to drive activity within these zones, and also enabling joint appointments so that people can work simultaneously for the university and for businesses inside the zone. Now, I'm taking you on a sentimental journey. For me, this is a global reminder, given the introduction and the places that I have worked. I began my career in communications in Nottingham, where Dr. Saeed was also a doctoral student. And Nottingham, as we heard, is a pioneering place. It opened campuses in both China and in Malaysia, and its innovation park, which was launched in 2008, is currently home to more than 100 businesses. I would like with you all now to share a video. So let me just go to my screen. I will find the video, but first I will actually go back to my screen and enable the audio for you, so you have the opportunity to actually hear what I'm going to share with you, which comes from the University of Nottingham. So here we see the Nottingham University Innovation Park, and it is a remarkable space. It provides a whole range of facilities, land occupied by the former Raleigh Bicycle site. It also has the headquarters of the university's commercialization office. It has land in which all sorts of early stage businesses and larger enterprises do work in partnership. Really quite an extraordinary space for people to do the kind of work that was being advocated by the task forces. Now, I realize that in watching this from Oman, not every university has the opportunity to tap into mature, long-standing relationships with industry as potential neighbours. There is not the possibility to discover the power of a partnership with a university like Nottingham. You may not have suitable buildings or the availability of adjacent development land. But this does not mean that you can't have productive, stimulating engagement with industry. If it's beyond the horizon, it doesn't mean that the early conversation can't happen now. Let's go to the oldest university in Sweden, Uppsala University. Now here, academics have licensed and they have gifted to the higher education world a concept called the AIM Day. Some of you may know about it, or you may have attended a session. It is an incredibly productive idea. What makes it truly special is that specific questions are raised by external organizations. They are then matched with expertise within the college or the university, and the outcome is a day which is filled with a series of workshops. It's a real exchange of knowledge and ideas focused on finding novel approaches to real world challenges. And Uppsala University say it really is a surprising route to new avenues to solve problems, and it can create conditions for continuing cooperation between external organizations and those colleagues in academia and industry where relevant. So let me again just ensure that we have an audio possibility here. I will enable the sound, take you to an example of a day like this, which was held at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland.
Yeah, a lot of the same group think. So, breaking out and coming to a session like today, where there's academics and also other organisations, gives us a chance to get more into the blue sky thinking. Excellent sessions and very diverse, and actually it's been very good working with a number of different companies as well and getting conversations with them.
This day is really useful because it allows academics to kind of branch out from that very tight focus and think about what their knowledge might mean more broadly and in those sort of real world contexts.
The interest for me on the AIM Day is meeting all the different companies, finding out more about their challenges and really trying to figure out how our research can then work with them in the commercial space and solve some of the issues that they're currently facing.
We've walked away with ideas that we can go back and implement straight away, things to look at, almost a reassurance that we're on the right path, which is actually incredibly valuable in its own right. Through Edinburgh University, we have access to a huge amount of skills and knowledge that we don't have internally. So it's bringing us access to something much wider.
This format is really giving the time for the conversation to flow, and then find out which is what they really need and where you can contribute.
I think there's tremendous opportunities to look at real-world problems that organizations are facing and bring in our expertise and build bridges between academia and industry and government.
I've really been very impressed by the way that industrial companies, big and small, are able to bring scientific or technical problems that they have and listen to the possible solutions and listen to the creativity that academics can bring.
Different kinds of visualizations that you can do, so we have
I think it works very well. There's a diverse range of opinions in the room, so that's good to generate new thinking on how to solve the problem. So yeah, it really works well.
So there we are, examples of an academic industry engagement day at the University of Edinburgh. And I should say to you that the Uppsala concept of the AIM format is something very new. It has only recently been put into practice by the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of Oxford, using particular disciplines and particular industrial partners. You saw there that Edinburgh are in the early stages of using it, and this is free. This has been put out into the wider world by Uppsala University with toolkits and opportunities, a bit like TEDx, but it's a very smart way of getting people into the same space from modern college and from your industrial partners' targets, however you would like to refer to them. And you know, the span of people in the room on occasions like that goes from young students to experienced professors to company CEOs, all brought together around areas of common interest. So as I have said, plenty of information online about that. Now, there is another model of interest worth exploring if you are keen to look at alternatives, but you have a more limited palette of people to go to. And the example that I have chosen here is from Birmingham in the UK, and it is Siemens, who are partnering with the University of Birmingham to address hugely important challenges in data technology, urban systems, and the net zero goal. So again, if I just adjust the settings for you on my presentation, what I will do now is share with you some content from the University of Birmingham. So I will share this with you again, just so you have the sound. Fortunately, these videos are subtitled with captions in English, but I will be happy to replay for the benefit of those of you who want to tune in spoken English.
How do you create the smartest university in the world? Bring a world-leading university together with a global technology powerhouse, and the possibilities are endless. Our world is evolving and technology is transforming the everyday, so we must continually transform. Together, the University of Birmingham and Siemens are starting the journey to create the smartest university campus in the world. Using cutting-edge smart sensor technologies, artificial intelligence and energy-efficient infrastructure, the university will become a living lab, capturing data across the campus and use it for innovation, teaching and research. Our goal is to deliver the campus of the future, enhancing the student, staff and community experience and accelerating the university's path to net zero. From Birmingham to Dubai, see how we are shaping the future of campuses through this energy and digital transformation journey.
So, a common theme that we are hearing today is about, if you like, bridging cultures. And that is something which has been, in terms of bridging the cultural divide, very much on the mind of the Dean of Engineering at Boston University, Ken Lutchen. And Professor Lutchen has actually said that companies and universities who need to forge long-term collaborations first have to deal with this question of culture. Neither side, in industry or in a university or college, would like a transactional model that requires a negotiation every time another project is being considered. Nobody wants a situation where really you can't just forge ahead to accelerate translation of that research into new products that drive economic growth. So one of my experiences in the UK, in Asia, in the Middle East, has been about the need to bring the two cultures together through events like the AIM Day you saw previously in Edinburgh, and other devices like the Siemens collaboration in Birmingham, to make sure that it really is second nature to the academic community to have those industry interactions. Of course, a very, very easy way of achieving that is to start up with something brand new. So my sentimental journey now takes us to the land of your neighbors, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where at the beginning of the 21st century, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud gave an extraordinary endowment, and he really created an institution which today describes itself as a pioneer of deep tech research and development, and one of the region's leading innovation hubs. So KAUST has made an offer to industry at a global scale, and you will see in this particular slide that that is a wide-ranging offer to industry. It covers helping businesses problem solve and accomplish their goals for growth through sponsored research programs, utilization of laboratories and resources, or, for example, taking office space or pilot testing on site. And if you go online and take a look at KAUST's Innovation Academy, you will see a suite of executive management staff education modules designed for multinational corporations, for government bodies, non-profits and businesses, all set up to achieve that goal of job creation and designed to take full advantage of export potential. And here is a flavour of some of the tenants who are now resident on the KAUST campus on the Red Sea coast in Tual, about 1 hour north of Jeddah. And I'm sure many of you may have had the opportunity to visit KAUST and to talk to the international community of innovation professionals, engagement professionals, and of course leading academics who are there. But it's a very welcoming, very outward looking place, and I'm sure there would be a lot to learn from there. Now we travel a few thousand miles more to Japan. My most recent experience as Vice President at OIST in Japan took me to an environment with all the grand ambition of KAUST, with a similar research agenda, a smaller but nevertheless still substantial budget. Let's face it, nobody does bling and big budgets like Qatar and Saudi Arabia. But in Japan, there was a very different set of institutional challenges. Japan has a different operating context from the rest of the world, despite the vast size of its economy, the modernity of its society, the quality of its infrastructure, superb reputation for advanced manufacturing. Japan and product excellence, I think, go hand in hand. But the innovation ecosystem in Japan is much less fully developed than you might imagine. And there is a much, much smaller venture capital base. So the president of OIST, Professor Peter Gruss, who's a former president of the Max Planck Society in Germany, he has noted that when research is brought into the commercial sphere, it can face what is commonly known as the valley of death. You may have heard this. It's about the important work has begun, but there is little to no revenue to support it. So to bridge that gap, we were working in terms of our external engagement and broadening the horizons to encourage a venture capital culture in Japan. You see on the screen here, bottom left, the leader of the Public Affairs Ministry in operation in the Japanese government. He was the deputy candidate, just missed out becoming Japan's Prime Minister, Taro Kono. On the upper side of that screen, you see the innovation park that has been envisaged at OIST. And bottom right, you see some of the venture capital and business community who we brought together because we had to hit the ground running. Accelerator programs, venture capital, incubation labs, high-tech innovation park. We had to engage strategically and energetically with business to look at bringing in the wider world too in a smart way to benefit both Japan and society globally. I was very, very pleased that we had the opportunity to go to Hitachi. And what I will do here is again, and hopefully do it correctly this time, stop sharing my screen and then reshare with you the flavor of a day we brought to the world when we shared a visit to the Hitachi site. The Hitachi site is in Tokyo. We didn't just take a delegation of senior academics, the great and the good. Instead, we actually took a very mixed party. You will see as you watch the video play.
I hope we share the mutual activities and explore the new opportunity to work together.
And I hope very much that we can have a collaboration with Hitachi in order to shape the future together.
For the future of the good relationship between the OIST and the Hitachi's laboratories.
So there we have a flavor of the day that was spent between Hitachi and Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. Now, my engagement proposal to Modern College and to all of the participants listening today is that when industrial leaders are in rooms with one or two senior delegates, this is a cultural thing, but we genuinely discovered that the industrial leaders like to be immersed in the whole life of the organization. They are, if anything, more motivated, more excited by interaction with students, with young minds, with that ambitious new fresh perspective as part of the mix. And that is why we took to Tokyo from Okinawa a delegation of hundreds of people, faculty members, but also very, very mixed, diverse groups of our students. And I saw that, I think at Modern College you have done that. You have deep relationships in the aviation sector, and it is good to see that kind of interaction taking place. Now, another approach that I would like to share with you briefly before concluding is that there is advantage in a relatively small and still much fast-growing economy like Oman in bringing in innovation, in stimulating and supporting innovation from other parts of the world. So let me take you back to my presentation and show you here a screen grab from national television in Japan. This is an Indian entrepreneur, Narayan Gurja. He was 22 years old at the time. He worked in a laboratory developing an environmentally friendly way of holding moisture in the ground to ensure that crops were not lost and yield was improved. Now, Narayan Gurja actually incubated that whole project at our Innovation Square Startup Accelerator in Okinawa, you know, more than 1,000 miles away. And I think it's a really interesting possibility that somewhere with such a fantastic culture, openness to the wider world, much loved for the beauty of its natural resources, for the welcoming culture and outlook of its people, Omani institutions could consider incubating not only Omani innovation, but also doing what a big university like OIST is doing, and actually applying that to people from further afield, because the benefits are reciprocal and the benefits can cut both ways. And I think if you go to I-Square at the OIST website in Japan, I will share all of these links subsequently, you will see a very interesting model for creating in a small way, nonetheless, a globally missioned hub with the potential for serious impact. Now, of course, I think we have to talk about COVID-19 and the fact that it has constrained a lot of the ways in which we work. And this was on the mind of the National Centre for Universities and Business in the UK a long time ago. Its CEO, Dr. Joe Marshall, articulated a need to simplify the landscape, but also to enable those connections. Now, some of you may be familiar with this Confer. It's a system which has been operational now for a few years in the UK. It's essentially an online platform that helps businesses to connect with universities so they can collaborate. It allows intellectual property to be scouted. It meets the challenge of finding universities doing work relevant to the particular industry or business, and it aims to uncover research expertise, funding sources, and resources within the university and college sector that make it more readily accessible to industry. So here are some metrics in terms of its performance. Since it started, Confer has connected 153 universities to that platform in the UK. 144,000 faculty members, 144,000 are part of this, alongside their 1.7 million publications, and there are nearly 16,000 listings of college and university resources. And that has been appealing so far to more than 46,000 businesses, large multinationals, small, medium-sized enterprises in the UK. And I think this idea of building a digital tool and digital enhancement of academia and industry collaboration is very much the way forward. So in closing, I thought I would take a look at the situation in Oman and where the horizon is set currently in the Sultanate. And there has been some recent analysis by CRISU, which was published in the Journal of Industry and Higher Education in January last year. And it has posed a number of challenges. Based on the study, there is a suggestion that several interventions could be considered to stimulate collaboration between industry and HEIs in Oman, where they currently don't exist. Co-funding capacity, the repurposing of HEIs away from teaching and research, perhaps, to become drivers of economic development, further enabling this integrated model. Also, policymakers in Oman could consider the establishment of dedicated university industry liaison units, technology transfer offices, which in all of the world, as we will know, are now the widespread mechanism for assisting researchers in establishing links with industry and to commercialize and protect IP and also achieve that critical mass. And thirdly, the cultural barriers within institutions that I've mentioned several times now to further strengthen participation in projects and even introduce measures which reward academic staff for developing those industry links and give them some income potentially from academic consulting and patenting licensing. And that report again in the Journal of Industry and Higher Education is referenced here and is readily available online. So in concluding for the moment, as we approach the hour, I would like to say that these are all questions which I know you will at Modern College and in many of the Sultanate's other parts of the world, you will, I think, be sharp and keen to discuss and question some of the issues raised. I very much look forward to hearing your comments and your observations, having presented a truly international menu of food for thought. None of it as delicious as Omani Shore or as tempting as Shisha Bortokal on the Muttra seafront or the Al Mujj Marina, but nonetheless an interesting menu of things to consider. And my fervent hope to all of you is that you will visualize the horizons laid here, and that will inspire ever closer academic and industry engagement in the service of the Omani people, but also of the wider world. So thank you very much. And with 1 hour taken, I will hand you back now into the very capable hands of Mr. Rehan Syed.
Mr. Jonathan, thank you very much. That was definitely enlightening. And not surprising, I have received many messages on my personal chat window. I have some questions, but with your permission, I take the liberty to ask my question first as a moderator.
That tends to be how it works, Mr. Rehan. Please fire away.
Okay, so my question revolves around your experiences in different regions. And what I see is a triple helix model of innovation, which includes government, industry, and higher education or university. What have been the key features in these geographically, demographically diverse regions?
Okay, so I think the principal features are the landscape of entrepreneurship development, of spin-out companies, of universities realizing the value of the knowledge that they create is massively overcomplicated. It is massively overcomplicated, even in the most successful markets. So let me remind you, within the presentation, Dame Anne Dowling made this observation in 2015. The task force of very eminent business leaders and vice chancellors said the same thing in 2020. Governments all around the world cannot resist bureaucracy and process. And where these processes are more successful is where some of the responsibility and ownership, the government is kept closely informed. The government is constantly credited for giving the strategic impetus for driving the agenda, but the deliverables rest within the institutions themselves and industry, and they are greatly simplified. Also, they are clarified at the outset. You will know that people working in industry are in many senses less patient than people in universities. People in universities are deeply gracious and polite, and they are prepared to listen to other perspectives, often for a long time. In industry, there is no time for that. People want simplicity and clarification. What do we put in financially? What are the agreed returns? Who are the people that we will be dealing with? What is the consistency in managing that relationship? Is there a single point of entry? Is there a single account owner? How do we publicize the benefits of the work that we are doing? All of those questions, Mr. Rehan, have been consistent around the world. I would say they have been most satisfactorily answered at KAUST in Saudi Arabia. And there is a bit of an extraordinary reason for that. You may know this, your colleagues, forgive me if this is something you already know, but in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, KAUST has a very different status from the rest of the higher education infrastructure. It wasn't built as part of a public program. It was actually built by Saudi Aramco, so from day one, its DNA was commercial. Now they have potential Nobel laureates doing science at KAUST, but they all understood that they were not walking into a public sector environment. They were walking into an environment that was really comfortable and relaxed with, multinational business. So KAUST, I think, have had the freedom to do it. In Japan, OIST, which is like a mini KAUST, they are now demanding the freedom to do it too. They are saying to the government, we were saying to the government, you create an environment that relaxes the conditions for dialogue, that makes venture capital easier to obtain here in Japan. You put that out there into the context of the national discussion about prosperity and economic growth. and we will do the rest. And so that degree of independence was good. But you know, I think that for all institutions anywhere in the world, whatever their operating context, there is the opportunity to behave more entrepreneurially. So as I said, you know, when I saw at Modern College, there was a discussion with Oman Airports, with Oman Air, you were linking, you know, forging connections in terms of industrial careers, development opportunities, contributing new thinking, new business models within that sector. That, I think, is a really strong platform and is something to develop further.
Interesting. Thank you. I think we have covered most of it. The next question actually connects with my own question. However, let me give the preference to the question by the audience member. This is with regard to what exactly should Oman do to build entrepreneurial universities. I think this question relates to your presentation about Nottingham and the video you showed about different universities, including KAUST. What are your thoughts specifically with respect to Omani higher education, since now we have a total revamp of the ministry and the way forward towards Oman 2040 vision?
So my observation would be that, you know, much larger global competitors in the academic space and in the industrial space have nevertheless decided that the right thing to do was to actually start with a pilot. Be incredibly concentrated, start with something which is tangible, easy to understand. So in Birmingham, they went for Siemens. They said, yes, we do a whole array of the work we all do around career development programs, around continuing professional development, but when it comes to doing something new, which could potentially deliver more, we will control this in a measured way by choosing a partner of distinction. So that was one model, the model that Birmingham took. In Saudi Arabia, if I don't know if we have any Saudi colleagues listening in, I'll be very careful in the way I say this, but because of the great abundance of resources in the Middle East, there is a tendency to declare mega projects, real mega projects. But sometimes these projects take a long time and become highly constrained by multiple strands, contractors coming, contractors going, and the vision sustains, but often the delivery is harder to see. Well, actually, in Saudi, I thought that they did absolutely the right thing with KAUST. They ring-fenced, they gave it a different operating context, they allowed it to adopt some of the culture of the wider world while being deeply rooted in Saudi Arabia and respecting Islamic culture and Saudi history and Saudi mores. All of that was the right thing to do, but nonetheless, they were targeted. So to answer the question finally, I think in Oman, what they should look at is some prototype programs with entrepreneurship and industrial engagement, where they ask a university to take on a particular partner and to really intensify that partnership and see where it leads. I also think that there could be consortia of universities which seek to do different things. Excuse me, I'm just going to close the door. I don't know whether you can hear, but I have a very hungry cat coming into my room. So I think in Oman, it would be very important to think about that collaboration model between clusters of institutions. And I also think that because Oman is so famous in the world as a destination, not just because of, you know, the mountains and the sea and all of the incredible natural attributes that the country is blessed with, but Oman is I think in a very unique position in the GCC because it is so warm in every way. You know, it's a good place to do business. It's seen as a more comfortable and more open place in which to do business. So the idea of co-curating innovation between Omanis and people from other parts of the world and sharing in the benefit, like the example I gave in Japan, where the Indian biotech entrepreneurs came to Japan, they were in the incubator space, they were given accelerator startup support, they've now leveraged millions of yen in venture capital. Their heart will always be in India, but they have an operating company in Japan as well. And actually, farmers in Okinawa are using the product to their own benefit. The economy is benefiting in Okinawa in the way that it will be in Rajasthan. And I just think Oman, you know, is a beautiful nation for linking. You know, holding things in the middle. You know, Oman looks in many directions in the best way. And I think there could be an argument for bringing in stimulating entrepreneurial and innovative activity by learning from small groups of people from abroad.
So I think that's very well answered. In fact, the takeaway from the entire discussion was pilot and low-hanging fruits. Not be over-ambitious, but be ambitious in planning, but start small with implementation as pilot programs.
Yes. I think
yes, please.
I absolutely agree, Mr. Rehan, and I would say that what we were doing in Japan were we are not so arrogant as a relatively small institution. Wherever we are, Oxford is very big and very famous, but Oxford still has to calibrate very carefully its relationships with Oxford City Council. At the end of the day, we need those who govern and those who make policy to be our advocates. So, as you say, I totally agree. The big picture economic vision, 2040, wherever it may be, as long as that gives us room to work underneath that umbrella, to do this kind of pilot activity, which is built around tangibles, things that can be understood, things that work for both sides. That's the kind of engagement that I think is most productive. The things that people fear are the ones that sound very grand, but very over-engineered and hugely complicated.
Okay, so to remain simple is what is a way forward.
That's it, and it's humbling when you hear a woman who is a member of the Order of Merit, Dame Anne Dowling. She was appointed by the Queen to her inner circle of advisors, and she says sometimes we get this badly wrong by making it massively too bureaucratic and overcomplicated. And engagement is about people. It's about me looking at you, Dr. Musa, Dr. Saeed, all of us here in this session. And it's about that human face-to-face engagement. So the other cultural point I would make, which is a little challenging, I as you can tell, I love Oman, but Oman has quite a hierarchical culture compared with other parts of the world. And I think if Oman is willing to invest more in the voice and the aspirations and the creativity of people who are at an earlier stage in their economic, cultural, social and academic life, that has got to be a good thing. As I said, Hitachi, there were 100 guys from Hitachi, all on big salaries, making big decisions about investment in research and in hiring all over the world. But they made what we say in English a beeline. They went straight for the students, for the youth. And they wanted that two-way thinking. So those kinds of interactions should be part of the mix in my view.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to the next question, Mr. Ray. This is a bit personal. The audience member wants to know what were your memorable experiences at the personal level with keeping all the lovely discussions and the grand discussions you're having. What were your each of the regions? What are your memorable experiences?
Right. Okay. Well, that is a fantastic question. And whoever asked that question should have a role in industry engagement, because maybe it's going very quickly to the heart and to forging those personal connections. I would say that in Saudi Arabia, I learned a great deal about misunderstandings and myths. The reporting in the West of the whole of the Islamic world can be extremely challenging and one-sided. And I know that there are degrees of Islamic rule and faith and observance around the world. But in Saudi, that was a learning experience. I made some very good friendships with Saudi colleagues, men and women, and families who I have sustained to this day. But I think in Saudi, I learned about the way in which biggest business in the world interacts when the stakes are highest of all. And again, it's like my previous point. There isn't the time for appendices in documents that are this thick. There isn't the time. These Shi Chun-fang, who was the founding president of KAUST, who was previously president of National University of Singapore and a member of the A-Star board in Singapore, driving innovation, and Singapore do it brilliantly. He was the same. They're able to capture the essence of a challenge and deal at the very highest level with what needs to be done, and then empower those around them to actually do the delivery, and trust them and give them the resources they need and interact at the right time. So that was a great example of leadership and grand ambition in Saudi Arabia. I've already answered the question in Oman. I've done really enjoyable work in Oman, but Oman has touched me in the most holistic way because of the, it has everything, Oman. Whenever there's a kind of a, not 5-star in a big super rich way, but just whenever people want to be shown, here is a place that you will fall in love with, the trend in the UK for the last 10 years has been to show Oman. You see the Musandam Peninsula, you see Salalah, you see Muscat, you see the Opera House, all of that. So the richness of Omani culture I enjoyed. Japan, I think team working and the ability to make decisions and advance work, taking account of a range of views. The Japanese do that in an incredibly well-organized, efficient way. And it's extremely rude in Japan to announce a development or expect there to be rapid implementation if you haven't done the work behind the scenes first. And the Japanese are, it looks like everybody is in alignment and everybody is behaving in the same way. That's not true. We're all people wherever we are in the world. But any brokering of a difference in view, a difference in emphasis, research and resources implications, the Japanese are brilliant at putting that right behind the scenes. So I've learned from that. I have also learned, I went to Japan thinking it would be like the movies, high tech, everybody traveling to work on a personal monorail or pressing a button on their jacket and disappearing and reappearing in the next room. Japan is facing the same economic challenges as Oman, as the UK, as the rest of the world. This fourth industrial revolution I mentioned at the beginning, nobody is being spared, and Japan has a lot of work to do. And I found it really interesting seeing how the society in Japan is getting used to that. This is a place which for 200 years had no involvement with the outside world, didn't want to know, borders closed. Japanese culture is very strong and the ways of doing things have been set very rigidly, but that is starting now to loosen, and it was fascinating to be within that.
Perfect. I think that was enlightening, and also I relate to some of the aspects of learning about different cultures by actually staying. We as expats or immigrants, we have different perception from our social media platforms, from our reading about different countries and what is shown in the media. So definitely some of the myths are busted, and learnings of different cultures is definitely it broadens your thought process. Mr. Raif, with your permission, one last question, please, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah.
Okay. So this question is with regard to Oman specifically. I think this is one of the members from a different HEI in Oman. What should we do as a college? Not as big as KAUST. That's what I'm presuming from the question. What are your inputs or guidance points to develop that into an entrepreneurial college? What is the first or a starting step there?
Yeah. So I think that's a very reasonable question, and I was slightly concerned when talking about the very large, well-resourced places that I've been lucky to work in. You have to take account of places where resources are much more lean. But I genuinely think that the AIM Day example from the university in Sweden, where it looks at bringing a mix of people at every level and the local enterprise and community into the room at the same time, can be very productive. Universities and colleges at the local level still need to listen. And I think it's a fascinating idea to say to a range of local businesses and those who employ many Omanis, to say, you come and tell us what your problems are. How can research solve these? These are the things that we're doing that we feel are holding us back. These are the things that are causing us difficulty in terms of sustainable growth and prosperity. Then there will be, because there always is, interesting thinking from bright young people and from academics, and there'll be an element of leadership of that discussion. That then creates that flow of mutual regard and value, which then allows opportunities for the college to help place students in, say, academic placement contexts, or in doing project work, or what we call in the culture sector, where I work now, a live brief, where a large organisation like the National Gallery in the UK will say to every university in the country, here is a challenge for your students, get them to solve it, and we'll choose the best one. You know, that can be scaled to any level. So I think there is certainly a possibility there. The other thing I would say to the college is think about international collaborations which have enterprise at their heart, so that you can leverage, if you like, the more mature state of the partner that you are choosing. I would also think very carefully about the culture that you have within the organization. You know, how comfortable truly are the academics you have in that, in some ways, more brutal, more fast-paced, more profit-driven commercial environment? And how adept are they at talking to industrial colleagues in terms that they will respect and understand? And I think that there are things that you can do which are educational about that, in bringing those groups together gently, but then building upon it. I think the other thing that institutions probably have done already is that they look at the academic base that they have, the research potential that they have, and they match that as closely as possible to the sectors around them that they are working with. My sense is that at Modern College you have done that already. I see that from lots of your outputs and from the academic work you're doing with business already. But that is something else which I think is absolutely essential to do. And the other thing, actually, which comes down to really what I began my career doing in journalism and news gathering and PR, is celebrate this, talk about it in terms that are clear, you know, terms that the broad public will understand. So, you know, I would have an industrial engagement story between a university or college and an industrial partner in the Times of Oman every day if I could. I seriously would, because we need to do a mind shift in terms of the wider public, you know, whose children come to our institutions, and they need to understand that not only are we doing basic research, the purest thinking, education in terms of what it should be, enlightenment, challenging thinking, becoming tolerant of new ideas, really developing intellectual agility. But today in the fourth industrial revolution, our universities are also about job creation, about driving prosperity, about, you know, pushing boundaries, about working at the kind of cutting edge of things. And that doesn't have to be science. You don't have to have the most advanced microscopy laboratories or you know, DNA sequencing laboratories in the world. They're, in the context of the number of colleges and universities on Earth, they are very few. But those of us who work in social sciences, in industrial relations, in accounting and finance and computing and IT, organizational development, HR, all of those things, the cultural industries, you know, the cultural sector, it's a huge economic driver in the life of Muscat. It's all hugely relevant to the visitor experience, where there is much more scope for growth and sustainable, environmentally responsible income. So I would say look at all of those subject areas and don't rule them out, because you'd be surprised how many companies in Muscat would still be hugely appreciative of that kind of partnership and willing to fund it, of course.
Okay. As they say, inshallah, that's you know, that's the way forward. Mr. Ray, thank you very much. You have been very accommodative of the questions. As a normal practice, as a moderator, what I always do is, apart from we getting, you know, we being lucky to hear you, we always bridge between participants and the speakers. With your permission, can our database team or marketing team share the email ID with the participants for further discussions if they can have? Also, can the participants connect you on LinkedIn? That would be a better platform for them to go ahead.
I'm very happy. You'll find me on LinkedIn if you type in my picture, apart from the glasses, looks very similar. I would be absolutely thrilled to have as many LinkedIn connections as possible with those working in the higher education and innovative sector in Oman. So LinkedIn is a perfect platform for that. In your synopsis of the talk, please edit out the delays when the videos didn't play. Not a problem in print. Not a problem in print.
Thank you very much.
But I'm very happy to answer questions, and I hope, inshallah, post-pandemic, that we will be able to meet and have fruitful discussions in purpose. And if you would, if Dr. Musa and Dr. Saeed, any of your colleagues, you Mr. Rehan, if you would like my assistance and those online in facilitating introductions to any of the organizations and resources profiled today, I will be, of course, I'd see it as part of this process. Very happy to do that.
Perfect. Well noted, sir. We'll definitely do that. With this, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our Dean, Dr. Musa Al-Kindi, our Associate Dean, Dr. Saeed Al-Kitani, and special thanks to the database team led by Mr. Ahmed and Mr. Abdul Kavi for being the warriors back end. Even though they are not on the front screen, they always do a tremendous job by coordinating and well establishing this platform for smooth presentation and discussions. And more importantly, special thanks to our participants who took out their time from the schedule to attend the talk. I'm sure this talk and further discussions with Mr. Ray will be beneficial for all of us and higher education in general. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Masalam.
Jonathan, it was a pleasure having you.
Oh, my pleasure, absolute pleasure. And I wish you all the very best. Good luck in the cricket tomorrow to Oman. And I hope that the college and the sector in the Sultanate continues to develop at speed and in a highly well stewarded way and goes from strength to strength, because a country so fantastic deserves that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Highly appreciated.
Bye-bye.